From the blackness of space, the blue world spun silently beneath us, a delicate sphere of water and land, fragile, unarmored, yet strangely luminous. Our sensors, calibrated for countless lifeless and submissive civilizations, hummed with routine confidence. The readings were simple: soft biological forms, primitive energy signatures, clustered settlements, nothing of threat, nothing to worry our command council. And yet, as our observation arrays refined the imagery, a subtle anomaly rippled across our analytical projections, a flicker of something unquantifiable in their behavior. We deployed the probers, expecting immediate compliance. The ships descended like metallic sentinels, their engines slicing through the thin atmosphere with precision. From orbit, the cities below looked laughable, sprawling, disorganized networks of structures that would have been trivial to obliterate. No fortifications, no defensive constructs worth noting. And yet, as we monitored the first human clusters, our protocols began to falter. A small group emerged from a shattered dwelling as one of our probes brushed the outskirts. They did not scatter, they did not panic. Instead, they observed, touched, and adapted. One extended a crude tool toward the disturbance, improvised, almost primitive, and within moments had repurposed the fallen rebel into a crude barrier. Another carried embers from a fire to douse the scorched remnants of their shelter. We had anticipated chaos, yet their response was swift, deliberate, and coordinated. Our analysts noted a pattern that defied conventional reasoning. When a minor tremor shook the terrain, humans moved as if guided by an unseen symphony. Structures were stabilized, fires contained, small squads reorganized instantly. Even from high above, we sensed the pulse of their resilience, a chaotic energy threaded with uncanny order. The faintest flicker of fear, what we expected, what any species would instinctively show, never emerged. Instead, a radiance of curiosity and defiance streamed from them, invisible yet palpable, repelling our intended dominance. We had arrived to test a fragile species, but now, with our probes hovering above their rudimentary cities, we realized the truth. These creatures were not merely delicate, they were adaptive, inventive, and disturbingly alive. And in that moment, as our fleet slowed its descent in cautious awe, a single signal erupted from one of the human settlements. A light, a sound, something that could only be interpreted as an acknowledgement of us, something challenging. The sensors blinked. We were not the hunters. We had become observers of a force we had underestimated. The first test had begun, but already the question pulsed through every layer of command. What are these humans truly capable of? Silence answered our first communication attempts. Our signals, precise, calculated, imbued with the unmistakable authority of a superior species, were met with nothing. Not fear.
Not acknowledgement. Not even confusion. The humans simply observed. Their fragile forms, soft and unarmored, moved with a deliberate slowness, yet a certain watchfulness that seemed almost aware. From the bridge of the command cruiser, we watched through layered optical arrays, as if studying insects in a glass container, and yet every instinct of our seasoned strategists screamed that we were being observed in return. Then it happened. A small squad emerged from the crumbling edge of a human settlement. They were unarmed, exposed, and seemingly insignificant, mere specks of biological matter against the metallic precision of our assault drone hovering above. Yet what followed defied every prediction. One of them picked up a fragment of wood, another a scrap of metal. They coordinated, silently, instinctively, converging on the drone as though guided by an invisible hand. And with movements so rapid and improvisational it made our simulations real, they struck. The drone was obliterated, not by conventional firepower, but by ingenuity. Wood splintered against metal, metal bent and twisted into crude levers and hooks, and then something astonishing occurred. The destroyed drone's components were repurposed. Its hull became a shield, its energy core a makeshift battering device. The humans, fragile and improvisational, had turned the instrument of our dominance into a weapon against us. Our analysts were stunned, the data streams overwhelmed with unanticipated variables. As our observation arrays tracked the humans, it became apparent that this was not an isolated incident. Groups of humans emerged, responding to threats with an instinctual coordination no algorithm could have predicted. Buildings that collapsed under minor tremors were immediately rebuilt or reinforced using the rubble. Fires were extinguished with nothing but instinctual teamwork, crude tools, and environmental improvisation. Each action was deliberate, purposeful, almost rehearsed, yet completely untrained. The human's ingenuity unfolded like a living algorithm, constantly rewriting itself in real time. We had expected terror, panic, blind obedience. Instead, we found courage, calculated, raw, and terrifying in its simplicity. Even as our orbital bombardments rattled the rudimentary cities, the humans did not scatter, they did not submit. They adapted, they reinforced, and they did so with a stubbornness that was almost audacious. Each encounter left our strategists uneasy, questioning assumptions that had guided us through countless conquests across uncountable worlds. Every species we had ever subjugated crumbled under our first demonstration of force. Yet these fragile creatures, not armed, not trained, not technologically advanced, responded with instinctual creativity and collective resolve that defied prediction. We began to see patterns emerge within their chaos.
Strangers collaborated as though they were linked by some invisible network, anticipating one another's moves without spoken language. Scouts guided rebuilding parties, signals were exchanged with gestures, glances, even the placement of objects, creating an intricate web of coordination we could barely parse. In the shadows of their crumbling dwellings, there existed a unity that transcended biology, a cohesion born not of command, but of something ineffable: purpose, will, spirit. Every simulation had failed, every predictive model had collapsed, and the more we observed, the more our arrogance wavered. For the first time, the question we never considered echoed through every command channel. Had we underestimated the humans? The moment that confirmed it came without warning. A human settlement under assault was reduced to rubble, yet the survivors emerged, battered but unbroken. They moved as one organism, scavenging debris, repurposing fallen structures into defensive positions, and striking back at our forces with methods both primitive and genius. Even as we adjusted our drones to compensate, the humans adapted faster, exploiting gaps we didn't even realize existed. They were fragile, yes, but fragile in a way that was deceptive. Fragility had been their camouflage, ingenuity their weapon. And then, in a moment that defied comprehension, they did something entirely unexpected. They approached our larger probes directly, unarmed, moving with deliberate risk, a collective gesture that seemed almost challenging. One human stepped forward, holding a crude device made from rubble and metal fragments. He raised it, not as a surrender, not as a plea, but as a statement. We did not understand it, could not parse its function in real time, yet the implications were clear. The humans were learning. They were improvising faster than we could react. They were adapting. We had assumed dominance. We had assumed the role of teachers. Yet now every measure we took, every calculation we relied upon, teetered on the edge of irrelevance. These beings, soft, unarmored, fragile, were rewriting the rules before our eyes. Their courage, ingenuity, and cohesion created a force that could not be modeled or contained. The very concept of superiority felt precarious. Our sensors recorded every movement, every improvised strike, every silent coordination, and with each passing minute, the creeping awareness settled into the fleet's consciousness. We were no longer conducting an experiment. We were witnessing something unprecedented, a species that could not simply be subdued or broken. And then, as we prepared for another intervention, the humans vanished, slipping into the shadows of their crumbling city, leaving behind only the improvised destruction of our drone. The silence returned, but it was different now, charged, expectant, electric with defiance. The first shock had passed. But the question remained, resonating through every command channel, every sensor array, every nervous calculation. How far would they go? And what would they do next? The fleet paused, hesitant. For the first time in recorded conquest, our assumptions faltered. The humans were no longer just a test subject. They were a puzzle, a living, adaptive force that had already begun to challenge everything we believed about fragility, courage, and survival. And in that moment, a terrifying realization rippled through the command. We were not observing life. We were being observed by it, and perhaps already outmatched. Confidence had a name in the command decks, and it had long been ours. Every calculation, every simulation, every prior conquest whispered the same truth. Superiority was ours, inevitable, and unquestionable. And yet, as the fleet moved into position above the planet, a subtle, disquieting unease rippled through the command structure. Perhaps it was the memory of the first contact, of humans standing unarmed before our drones, their improvised weapons wreaking havoc where none should have been possible. Perhaps it was the glimmer of awareness that their responses were evolving faster than our models could track. We escalated. Every orbital weapon was calibrated to perfection. Cities were subjected to firestorms. Mechanized assault units poured into the largest population centers. Chemical dispersal systems released compounds intended to cripple and subdue. Each strike was a test of fragility, a demonstration of what should have been their inevitable submission. And yet, each strike produced results that were unexpected. The humans adapted. Entire urban zones, previously reduced to ruin, reformed almost overnight into fortresses bristling with defenses. Debris was repurposed into barricades. Fallen vehicles became cover and weapons. Ruined structures were reassembled, reinforced, and modified to create choke points no algorithm had predicted. Our sensors recorded patterns of movement that seemed chaotic at first, but upon closer observation revealed a startling logic, a logic that evolved with every encounter. Each casualty, each loss, did not break their resolve, it hardened it. Morale spread like a contagion, propagating resilience faster than any known mechanism. Survivors learned from every mistake, shared knowledge instantly, and coordinated actions with an efficiency that defied probability. Even the smallest squads executed ambushes with precision, exploiting gaps in our formations that we had assumed invulnerable. Recon drones that once swept the streets without resistance now encountered traps, feints, and countermeasures that revealed anticipatory thought. What was most disturbing was not their resistance, it was the speed at which they learned. Night after night, simulation after simulation, we attempted to anticipate their moves. Night after night, they outpaced us.
Command analysts debated in whispers, their voices tinged with disbelief. The parameters used to assess resilience, adaptability, and strategic intelligence were catastrophically inadequate. The humans were teaching us new rules, exposing weaknesses in our assumptions, redefining the very framework through which we evaluated life. Some theorists posited that this was evolutionary acceleration in real time, genetic adaptation coupled with social ingenuity, manifesting as instinctual coordination that no algorithm predict. Others whispered darker possibilities, that the human mind was somehow inherently incompatible with conventional logic, that their creativity and courage were emergent properties beyond quantification. We had intended to demonstrate power. Instead, we had provoked ingenuity. Every escalation only honed their responses. When a mechanized unit moved into a city street expecting to sweep the population, it found itself trapped in corridors of debris repurposed into defensive kill zones. When chemical dispersal clouds were deployed, humans used rudimentary filtration and makeshift protective barriers to survive, emerging from the haze to strike with improvised flamethrowers and crushing devices made from our own wreckage. Each attack provided them with the opportunity to learn, adapt, and counter in ways that confounded our simulations. We observed patterns emerging. Humans thrived under stress. They became sharper, faster, and more coordinated in the presence of threat. Weakness was a fleeting illusion. Adversity was fuel. Casualties did not diminish numbers, they multiplied effectiveness. Survivors anticipated moves before they occurred, reading patterns in our formations that even our AI struggled to predict. Entire networks of settlement, even in ruins, communicated silently across distances, coordinating defenses with gestures, signals, and improvised signaling devices. The planet itself seemed to conspire with them. The terrain was molded into a living weapon by those we had assumed fragile. Every escalation revealed the terrifying truth. We had underestimated them. Every strike reinforced the notion that humans were not merely survivors, they were adaptive masters, thinking and innovating faster than we could impose order. And yet, in the upper echelons of command, a terrifying question began to emerge. Had we ever truly tested a species, or had our arrogance blinded us to the possibility that we could be outmatched? Reports of minor ambushes traveled up the chain in an endless cascade of shock and disbelief. A single unit, cornered and outnumbered, would dismantle its own environment to create a tactical advantage. Bridges were rigged to collapse in precise patterns, turning our mechanized units into unwitting demolition tools. Streets became mazes of obstacles, each ambush escalating the humans' ingenuity.
Even where our forces struck hardest, survivors adapted instantly, counterattacking in ways that were unpredictable yet devastatingly effective. And in that adaptation, there was an eerie coordination, an emergent intelligence that exceeded individual capability. Humans who had never met before appeared to anticipate one another's movements, striking in concert as if guided by some collective cognition. Communication need not be spoken, it was observed in the tilt of a head, the placement of a barricade, the timing of an improvised detonation. These creatures, so fragile in appearance, had converted chaos into order, danger into opportunity. We began to realize with a growing sense of dread that our technological superiority alone was insufficient. Force could no longer dictate outcomes. Each escalation had been a test of their limits, and instead of breaking them, it had revealed their true potential. And as we watched, the stark truth became undeniable. These humans were not just surviving, they were mastering adaptation in real time, evolving strategies faster than our forces could respond. The command decks grew silent as the implications sank in. Our simulations had been rendered obsolete, our assumptions shattered, our confidence, once absolute, trembled under the weight of human ingenuity. We had believed in superiority, in control, in inevitability, and now the planet below whispered a terrifying counterpoint. Superiority alone could not predict the unpredictable. The humans thrived in the chaos we created. Each failed assault, each unexpected counterattack, each improvised fortress was a lesson they absorbed instantly, and with every lesson, the gap between expectation and reality widened. In the quiet moments before the next strike, a chill swept through the fleet. If this was only the beginning, if these fragile creatures could adapt so rapidly under measured escalation, then what horrors awaited us as they learned, evolved, and struck back? For the first time in recorded conquest, doubt had a form, and it was human. We had underestimated them. That truth rippled through the command decks like a contagion, spreading faster than any failure report or sensor reading could. Our high-ranking strategists, secure in the belief that overwhelming power and precision would bend the humans to our will, were caught off guard as reports came in from the field, reports that seemed impossible, even to our most advanced analytical systems. Humans were capturing our technology, not merely resisting it, not merely surviving its destructive capacities, but seizing it, reconfiguring it, and turning it against us. Fragments of drones, once instruments of observation and suppression, became shields, traps, and weapons. Sections of our sensor arrays, thought inaccessible to primitive beings, were dismantled and integrated into defensive networks. Improvised explosives detonated with precision, ambushes executed in patterns that were simultaneously chaotic and uncannily strategic. Entire garrisons fell, not from superior firepower, but from cunning, coordination, and audacity we had never anticipated. Observing from our orbital stations, the sequence of their maneuvers felt like a dance choreographed by instinct itself, yet informed by an intelligence that outstripped every simulation, every theoretical model, every assumption we had made about fragility and survival. Civilians, scientists, warriors, all contributed to the unfolding force. Those we had assumed incapable of resistance now engineered barricades, improvised weapons, and communication networks. Ordinary humans, students, laborers, artisans, coordinated ambushes, guided surviving units, and anticipated our every move. Courage, it seemed, was contagious. One act of defiance inspired another, rippling outward across the survivors like a shockwave of inevitability. Reports came in faster than our processing arrays could compile. Units trapped behind enemy lines, towns isolated and surrounded, yet still mounting organized attacks. Entire mechanized columns were lured into mazes of debris, ambushed with a precision that was horrifying in its simplicity. Observation drones, designed to record and intimidate, were destroyed with weapons assembled from wreckage we had thought unusable. The humans' actions defied probability. Where our war models predicted collapse, they engineered adaptation. Where we anticipated chaos, they created order. From orbit, the scale of their ingenuity was staggering. A single city reduced to rubble, transformed overnight into a network of fortified positions, each designed to channel, trap, and confuse our forces. Signals from survivors coordinated movements across kilometers, using visual cues, fires, and improvised devices to direct teams with startling accuracy. One unit, cornered, would feign retreat, drawing our mechanized units into ambushes designed by minds untrained in military theory, yet executing strategies beyond comprehension. They were inventing tactics as they moved, adapting to every measure we imposed, converting adversity into an advantage.
The evolutionary potential of these beings, once considered negligible, now loomed like a shadow over our strategy. Every attack we launched refined their methods. Every unit we destroyed seemed to teach the survivors faster than our systems could record. They adapted in hours what our simulations suggested would take decades. They coordinated across distances we had assumed impossible. Their improvised technology integrated seamlessly into their strategy. And yet, through every countermeasure, every trap, every ambush, they moved with a singular clarity of purpose: survival, adaptation, and eventual dominance of the space they inhabited. Our arrogance faltered.
For the first time in recorded history, the alien equivalent of fear coursed through command channels. Hesitation rippled from high command down to field units as reports flooded in. One garrison wiped out in hours, a mechanized column destroyed in a trap that exploited terrain and timing perfectly, another unit lured into an improvised minefield. Observers were confounded. We had expected chaos, we had predicted disarray, we had assumed that the humans would crumble under sustained assault. But the humans did not react. They dictated the battle. Entire urban networks became instruments of their will. Streets became funnels, intersections became kill zones, collapsed buildings became defensive positions. Civilians moved supplies, repaired weapons, tended to the wounded, and even ambushed our units when the opportunity arose. Their organization was instinctual yet deliberate, chaotic yet precise. It was as if the very environment of the planet had been turned into an extension of their will. We began to perceive patterns in what had first appeared to be randomness. The humans were not merely reacting, they were engineering outcomes, converting survival instinct into a form of strategy that no machine could predict. Even our most cautious units began reporting confusion, disorientation, hesitation. The humans did not behave as other species had. They did not seek submission. They did not flinch at overwhelming odds. They improvised, coordinated, adapted, and above all, they persisted. Each victory, no matter how small, emboldened others. Small groups of survivors would capture isolated outposts, integrate captured drones into defenses, and use them to strike at our supply lines. Entire towns, once believed lost, became nodes in a rapidly expanding network of resistance. Our command system struggled to quantify what we were witnessing. Probability matrices collapsed, predictions failed. Observers whispered that these humans were creating a new kind of warfare, one that relied not on sheer technological superiority, but on ingenuity, adaptation, and cohesion. The planet itself seemed to bend to their will. Debris, fire, and ruin became tools, improvised instruments of strategy. The more destruction we imposed, the more formidable they became. And through it all, there was a rhythm, a strange, inexorable order born of necessity and instinct. Chaos had been anticipated, disorder had been planned for, but what we observed was something entirely different. A species rising not despite adversity, but because of it. Every human action, every coordinated strike, every improvised device told a single story. Survival was not their goal alone. It was the catalyst for evolution, adaptation, and unexpected mastery. From our orbital vantage, it became impossible to comprehend the audacity of their tactics. A single survivor could influence the course of an entire engagement. Civilians could transform into strategists overnight. Young and old, weak and strong, all contributed to a force that defied calculation. Even when their cities collapsed under our bombardments, they used the rubble to build anew, stronger, better adapted. Our assumptions, that fragility equaled weakness, that chaos would ensure submission, were shattered. And then it became clear. For the first time, we were experiencing hesitation. Not operational delay, not miscalculation, but true apprehension, the alien equivalent of fear. A recognition that we were facing not mere disorder, but a force that thrived on adversity, converted catastrophe into strategy, and evolved faster than our technology could measure. The humans were no longer merely reacting to our presence. They were dictating the tempo of war, controlling outcomes with ingenuity and courage that defied reason. Reports came in like waves of disbelief. Mechanized units trapped in collapsing cities, supply lines ambushed by survivors using our own devices, entire battalions deceived by clever feints. Commanders muttered in disbelief. They were supposed to be fragile. They were supposed to crumble.
Yet these humans, untrained, unarmored, exposed, had turned the tide. The first phase of our assault, designed to demonstrate overwhelming superiority, had become a demonstration of our miscalculation. And in that moment, as the fleet paused above the planet, we realized a terrifying truth. We had underestimated them. Not merely underestimated, but misunderstood. Humans were not chaotic. Humans were not weak. Humans were not predictable. Humans were masterful. For the first time, the battle was theirs to dictate, and the question echoed through every level of command, chilling in its implications. If this was only the beginning, then what would these humans do next? The fleet prepared for further strikes, but hesitation lingered. Sensors tracked movement. Strategy boards displayed possibilities. Every prediction carried a margin of uncertainty too great to ignore. And beneath it all, the realization settled like a shadow. We were no longer controlling the war. The humans were. The tide had shifted. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly, as the humans' response moved from reactive adaptation to deliberate offense. From orbital observation, we watched as survivors, civilians, soldiers, scientists, coordinated with precision that defied every calculation we had made. Small bands, armed with little more than scavenged tools and repurposed debris, ambushed entire fleets of our mechanized units. Drones that once patrolled streets with absolute authority were disabled, rerouted, or destroyed by methods so rudimentary yet ingenious that our analysts struggled to reconcile cause and effect. What we had once considered fragile had become a force of terror, not because of strength, but because of creativity, coordination, and an unyielding will to persist. Entire cities, once reduced to smoking ruins, rose again as bastions of resistance.
Streets were barricaded with overturned vehicles, toppled walls, and scavenged machinery. Windows became firing ports, alleys became kill zones, every obstacle transformed into a trap. Observing these fortifications from above, it seemed as though the humans were using the environment itself as a living weapon, manipulating terrain, debris, and fire with a precision that no algorithm could predict. Each act of rebuilding became simultaneously defensive and offensive, a calculated, instinctive mastery of space and motion. Our command was unsettled, tactical predictions failed, simulations collapsed. Every attempt to regain dominance triggered a new layer of human ingenuity. Units we thought contained or neutralized returned, transformed, and coordinated with other groups in patterns impossible to anticipate. Entire enclaves communicated across ruined landscapes with silent signals, gestures, and improvised devices. Their coordination did not rely on technology, hierarchy, or centralized command. It emerged from instinct, observation, and the shared imperative of survival. From the ground, the horror became visceral. Our troops described it as if the humans had become something otherworldly. Their movements were unpredictable, their attacks synchronized, their resourcefulness boundless. A single squad could immobilize a mechanized unit by manipulating rubble and fire. Another would dismantle an assault drone in minutes, repurposing it as a shield, a trap, or even a weapon against its own fleet. Survivors turned debris into barricades, scavenged fragments into tools, and converted failure into strategy with a relentless efficiency that shattered every expectation. Commanders whispered of retreat, some suggested negotiation. The idea seemed ludicrous yet terrifyingly plausible. Even in the face of our technological superiority, the humans did not ask for mercy, they demanded survival through sheer determination. Each engagement revealed their will as a force stronger than the weapons we wielded, stronger than fear, stronger than anything we had encountered in the countless species we had studied, subdued, or annihilated. We began to recognize a pattern. Humans thrived under stress. Each setback, each loss, each failed strike became a lesson, a refinement of tactics, a spark of ingenuity. They evolved faster than our forces could respond, converting adversity into adaptation, chaos into order. Units trapped behind enemy lines found paths to victory. Towns isolated for days coordinated counterattacks that decimated our supply chains. The fragility we had assumed was an illusion, a mask over a species capable of operating as a living, adaptive machine. Even their improvisation bordered on the uncanny. Entire groups anticipated our maneuvers without communication, as if shared knowledge flowed invisibly among them.
We observed scouts using mirrors, fires, and improvised beacons to signal distant allies.
Explosives crafted from scavenged materials struck with precision beyond calculation. Reinforcements arrived where none were expected, cutting off mechanized units that believed they had established control. Survivors scavenged debris to create weapons, shields, and traps, using our own destroyed machinery against us. Our assumptions about linear causality, probability, and strategic dominance were being rewritten in real time. The psychological effect on our forces was immediate. Morale faltered, uncertainty spread, hesitation replaced confidence. For the first time in recorded conquest, the alien equivalent of dread swept through command and field alike. Our sensors recorded human activity with unprecedented intensity. Yet the more we watched, the less we could predict. Every new deployment, every offensive strike, every calculated maneuver was met with a response that was faster, more ingenious, and more coordinated than anticipated. And then came the moments that confirmed the unthinkable. Entire fleets were ambushed in corridors of space above urban zones, rendered ineffective by the humans' ingenious coordination of scavenged drones and improvised traps. Reinforcements sent to recover lost units were lured into dead zones, ambushed with precision, and forced to retreat or risk annihilation. Survivors appeared where none should have existed, orchestrating counterattacks that neutralized threats before they could manifest fully. Each encounter seemed to operate on instinctive collective intelligence, a hive-like synchronization devoid of central command, yet devastatingly effective. We realized with mounting horror that the human survival instinct was not merely biological, it was cultural, instinctive, and terrifyingly effective. Their responses were informed by instinct, memory, observation, and creativity simultaneously. Each casualty propagated resilience rather than despair. Each failure refined strategy rather than discouraging it. Even in the most chaotic moments, they remained cohesive, adaptive, and unyielding. The realization rippled through every level of command. This was no longer a species to be tested. This was a species capable of redefining the very metrics of conflict, survival, and intelligence. We had come to measure, to assert control, to dominate. Instead, we were forced to witness the terrifying efficiency of a species whose creativity, courage, and cohesion transcended our calculations. The humans' counteroffensive was unstoppable. What had begun as isolated acts of improvisation now spanned entire regions. Mechanized units, drones, and garrisons fell not to overwhelming force, but to anticipation, coordination, and relentless adaptation. Each encounter taught us a lesson we were unwilling yet compelled to learn. Under existential threat, humans did not merely survive, they became instruments of their own evolution. And as our commands struggled to respond, a chilling truth crystallized. The humans were no longer merely reacting to our aggression. They were dictating the battlefield. The planet itself, ruined, burned, and torn apart, had become an extension of their will. Debris, ruins, rubble, and fire were weapons fortification had come to demonstrate of all. Humanity's survival instinct is not something that can be subdued, calculated, or contained. It is instinctive, cultural, adaptive, and terrifyingly effective. And in that recognition, fear, cold, precise, and unrelenting, settled across the fleet. We were not the masters, we were the observers. The humans, fragile, unassuming, underestimated, had evolved into a force capable of rewriting the entire assessment of life across the galaxy. The question echoed through every sensor feed, every command channel, every analytical model. If this is what they are capable of in the first stage, what will they become when fully mobilized? The answer, we feared, would be unavoidable. Defeat had taken form. It was not sudden, not violent in the way we expected. It arrived gradually, inexorably, like a tide no dam could hold. From orbital command, we watched the remnants of our invasion fleet scatter, retreating across the blackness of space. Every maneuver, every withdrawal, was shadowed by human strike units that had adapted with a speed that defied all our calculations. Ambushes, once minor, had become coordinated attacks spanning kilometers, striking with precision, ruthlessness, and efficiency that no simulation, no AI, no doctrine could have predicted. Yet even in their triumph, the humans did not gloat. They did not chase our retreating forces beyond reason. Instead, they adapted. From the planet's surface, we observed as survivors stabilized broken cities, repaired critical infrastructure, and reclaimed shattered technology. Each ruined district became a bastion of ingenuity. Drones, weapons, even fragments of our orbital arrays were dismantled and integrated into their own systems, transformed into tools of survival and innovation. It was terrifyingly elegant. Each defeat, each setback, each destroyed structure became a foundation for advancement.
Reports flowed in from the field, each one more confounding than the last. Captured officers, taken alive, reported that humans treated them not with cruelty, but with calculated curiosity. Weapons we had deployed against them were repurposed, modified, and then used in further engagements. Every observation, every captured asset, every improvised trap was recorded, learned from, and refined.
Humanity was not merely surviving, they were rewriting the rules of engagement, turning fragility into a strategic advantage and apparent chaos into a prelude to mastery. From our vantage, the planet itself had become a living mosaic of resilience. Cities were rebuilt faster than our strikes could destroy them. Supply networks reemerged almost instantly, coordinated through improvisation, memory, and instinct. Terrains devastated by bombardment were sculpted into defenses, ambush points, and pathways or counterattacks. What we had assumed to be vulnerability was in fact a strength disguised by unpredictability. Every strike we made, every maneuver intended to assert dominance, was converted into opportunity, a lesson that honed the human's efficiency. Fleet officers whispered in disbelief. Units that had once been considered secure, technologically superior, and untouchable were rendered irrelevant by groups of humans operating without centralized command. Entire regions of Earth seemed to act as extensions of human will. Observation drones that attempted to track movements were constantly misdirected, misled, or destroyed. It was as if the planet itself had become an instrument of defense, molded by human ingenuity, fortified by instinct, and synchronized across distances that defied comprehension. Even as we withdrew, the humans maintained cohesion. They did not scatter to looting or celebration. Instead, they adapted to the new reality. Every strike we had executed became fodder for their learning. Every loss they suffered only hardened their tactics and reinforced their coordination. Reports of captured officers, repurposed drones, and modified weapons reached us not as intelligence, but as echoes from an unknowable intelligence. Their will to survive, to learn, and to dominate had become a force in itself, reshaping every metric we had ever used to measure life and resilience. The fleet, once confident, now retreated without pride. Calculations that had predicted human fragility lay shattered in command archives. The species we had come to subjugate had become our teachers. Each failure we encountered, each encounter with human ingenuity, forced an acknowledgement of a truth we had never prepared for. The human survival instinct was not merely a biological drive, it was cultural, instinctive, and terrifyingly effective. Their courage, adaptability, and mastery of improvisation had rewritten the rules of conflict. We fled not with honor, but with the bitter knowledge of miscalculation. Across the systems, communication spread warnings. Earthlings are not to be underestimated. Their adaptive instincts surpass our simulations. Their ingenuity is inhuman. Their resilience is inexhaustible, and their potential is infinite. As the fleet traversed the void, the last images of Earth imprinted themselves upon our sensors. Cities gleamed with makeshift fortifications. Streets, once rubble, now formed labyrinthine defensive networks.
Fires were contained and redirected, structures repurposed in hours, and scattered survivors coordinated with a precision that appeared impossible. What we had assumed to be chaos had become strategy. What we had assumed to be fragility had become a weapon of unmatched efficiency. In the aftermath, silence fell across the retreating units. Commanders contemplated the bitter reality. For the first time, we had not conquered. We had not dominated. We had been observed, studied, and outmatched. Humanity had survived. Humanity had adapted. Humanity had prevailed. And in every calculation, in every assessment, in every prediction that we had relied upon for millennia, the conclusion was unavoidable. These beings, fragile, underestimated, unassuming, had become a force that would alter our perception of life itself. The lesson was brutal and absolute. Survival instinct, combined with ingenuity, cohesion, and unyielding will, could overcome even the most technologically superior force. Earthlings had proven that fragility is not weakness, that chaos can be transformed into order, and that determination, adaptation, and courage can rewrite the rules of engagement for any species. And as we fled into the void, pursued by humans striking with ingenuity that exceeded expectation, the knowledge settled inescapably upon every officer, every pilot, every sensor operator. We had miscalculated. We had been tested, and we had failed. The species we had come to subjugate had become our teachers, not in submission, but in fear, resilience, and the terrifying art of survival. The planet below shimmered in the twilight of ruin and revival. Fires burned, but only where controlled. Cities rose from debris. Survivors moved with purpose.
creating order from destruction. The humans were no longer reacting. They were mastering. They were evolving. And somewhere deep in the cold vastness of space, as our fleet vanished from orbit, the final recognition echoed across every system we had ever intended to dominate. Earthlings are not merely survivors. They are the standard by which all life must now be measured. For in their triumph, they had proven a truth that would haunt our species for millennia. Ingenuity, courage, and the relentless drive to live are forces that cannot be subdued, and any who underestimate them will learn the cost of arrogance. The humans had won, and the galaxy would never forget.